If you're really observant, if you're paying attention, if you care about the person that you're interacting with or your target customer, you care about them, then your observations of them will inform how you respond and cater to fill that need.
That's really powerful. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for joining me. I cannot believe that I actually get to do this in person. We've been talking about doing this via Zoom for so long, so I think it's actually panned out that we got to do this while we're in Utah. So thank you for making the time.
Thank you for having me and for joining me here at our own headquarters.
I know. How amazing are they? I feel like we've got so many different places we could have recorded this, but this is kind of perfect. Share what you love. I think that's such a really timely message in direct selling right now, because and really timely to the conversation we're going to have today too. But for those that don't know you yet, I mean, I've had the pleasure of meeting you, a year and a half ago now. It was my last trip before I had Addie, so I was heavily pregnant, speaking at your event, and I got to hear you speak and share your passion for Stampin' Up and the industry. And so, but what I'm keen to start with today is a little bit about your childhood and how Stampin' Up came to be what it is today. So do you want to share a little bit about your background and your experience in this industry?
Sure, I'd love to. I think maybe where I'll start is in our family living room. When I was about 8 years old, my mom and my aunt decided to start this small little business that they were going to do while we were at school. And so it was just something that was going to happen.
So you come home and there's
stuff in the living room, and it was just my parents didn't have furniture in this one room, and they'd had some experience in the industry, and they thought we're going to combine rubber stamps at the time, right, crafting with this model. And so they set out to do just that. And the business was run during nap times and school hours in my family living room when I was a kid. So this business is personal for me. It's something that I've grown up with and has shaped me in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So they start in your living room. At what point did it leave the living room? At what point did it grow to the point where it was like, great, we got our house back?
We moved from the house into a retail space, and then the next door retail space, and then the next door space, just kind of like on one of those blocks, you just keep taking up more and more space. And there came a time where there just wasn't more space there to take. And so my family moved back to a small town in southern Utah where we had a facility there that was in the family. Extended family. So Kanab, Utah is where I spent most of my childhood. And that's where I learned to work. It's where I learned to connect with demonstrators and respond to different impacts in the business. So that was kind of where all of that rubber met the road.
I love it, with the rubber stamps.
I know, right?
So I'm really curious to know, it's one thing to have a craft and an interest. It's a whole nother thing to go, hey, let's turn this into a business now, specifically in the direct selling industry. Do you know what I guess that transition looked like for your mum? Why she sort of went, hey, I love crafting. We love doing this together. Let's turn this into a business and direct selling specifically.
Well, like I said, they'd played around with other businesses in direct sales. So whether that was Discovery Toys or Pampered Chef or Tupperware, things like that. So they were familiar enough with the model. Right. And gathering people together around a certain product or experience. And so it was just easy once they found this paper crafting bit. That wasn't part of that model. And so they just said, let's mush the two together and see what comes of it. See if we can gather people around this craft. And at the time, it was just retail. You couldn't get the products anywhere else. You had to go to a store.
This was what I was going to ask. Were these products something that were easy for people to get hold of ordinarily, or was this quite a unique product at that time?
It was more niche, I would say. You had some different stores on the West Coast, and so we just kind of stumbled into that. And from there, we actually started out as a wholesale business. So we didn't even have our own products that we were selling.
Yeah.
That didn't happen until years later when it all became exclusive and everything that we developed was in-house.
Yeah.
So it just happens. I think a business grows a little at a time,
Yes.
over time,
Yep.
right? One decision after another. So I think that's important to share too, because as a demonstrator, our field, we call them demonstrators, they're starting small, right? We all start from somewhere smaller, and it doesn't start out being something this huge. It grows over time.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to remember.
I think that's a really, really important point. And in fact, if we were to take this back to social media for a little moment, because, that's kind of my job, but, a lot of people look at people that are really successful in this space, whether it's in a direct selling business or whether it's on social media, and they think, oh, I can't do that. But what they've got to remember is everyone started somewhere. Everyone did their first live at one time, or, put their first post up on social media, or, did their first demonstration with a party. It's not, they don't get there overnight. And, I love that one step at a time mentality. And I think that's really important to remember no matter where you're at, right, in the business.
It's true. For us, for Stampin' Up, it was a living room.
Yep. I love the living room stories most of all. I think a lot of people are unaware of where these incredible companies come from. And, we talk every day about what a powerful industry this is and how it changes lives. But people can easily look at, you've got this incredible big headquarters here. It's amazing. And by the way, I've got to just say it is snowing outside. I'm so happy, because if it's going to be this cold, it should snow. So
you're going to be distracted.
I am so distracted. I'm looking out the window here and I can just see snow, which is so great. But, people can look at these incredible headquarters and assume that this is where it all started, but it starts in the living room. It starts with an idea. It starts with, a couple of people coming together with something exciting that they're passionate about. And I love that about so many companies, including yours in this industry. It's so special. So
I agree.
I kind of want to know a little bit, like, have you been involved in the business since you were a little girl? Did you sort of step away at some point and then come back? What did that transition look like for you? Were you always supposed to be CEO of Stampin' Up?
I wasn't always going to be CEO. Like I said, I was about 8 years old when the business began. And I just remember going to visit the office and all of the work that it takes to put into a startup. That's one thing I think that we take for granted, is just how much work a new business takes.
Yes.
Especially a startup in any form or fashion, right? And so I remember those working years, the pillows on the floor, the sleeping bag on the floor. We've got to proof a catalog and get it out kind of thing. Like, I remember that as a child. When we moved to Southern Utah, then I was old enough to be able to count cardstock and count paper and package paper and pick orders. There was like this cart that I pushed down the row and grabbed the item numbers off of the shelf, or filing, that kind of thing. So I think my childhood was spent learning about what this business meant. First on the inside, from all of our employees. I learned to work from some amazing people. So much so that I was like counting silverware as I was unloading the dishwasher, like you get really good at some of those things. So I think that was my younger years. I actually met my husband at Stampin' Up, if you can believe it.
I love that.
So because of Stampin' Up, I have a fantastic husband and a beautiful family. And so that was one point.
And 5 amazing kids.
5 kids, yes.
Crazy enough to have 5 children. I don't know.
I don't know. Come on, Sam. But I am a grandma, which is very cool.
Yes, that is so exciting. So you've become a grandma since since Addie was born.
Yes.
So this has all happened since
in the last little while.
Wow. Yeah. What does that feel like? I know this isn't where we're going today, but I just want to know, what does it feel like being a grandparent versus a parent? Is it different?
It is different.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're not in control of the same sphere. You just get to enjoy them.
And then give them back.
I don't think you feel as responsible for the person and human they're going to become. You can just shower them with all the love that you have in your heart. And that's my job.
Lollies and the chocolate.
Yes,
yeah,
of
which
course.
is exactly what my mum does too.
Of course.
Got it. So you sort of grew up working in the business, doing all of those amazing things. And then as, you came into adulthood, did you continue working in the business?
Yeah, since I met my husband, I would do contract work on the side. So I started out as just a crafter.
Yep.
We call them concept.
Just a crafter.
Just a crafter. I started out just loving the product, just like many of our demonstrators do.
Yeah.
And so some of my work as a teenager was in our books.
Yes.
And so I gravitate toward the sales and marketing side of the business because that's what I love the most. I love the craft. I love the people. I love the community that we've built. And so on and off, that was kind of what I did. But I will tell you about my first event.
Yes.
If that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so my first event, we couldn't go to an event until I was 12. And so my first event, I remember walking in.
You're doing like a convention, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, my first convention. And it was Western themed, which is hilarious. and I remember walking in and really finally catching the vision of what this business is.
Yeah.
You know, I saw it on the other side as a tween, right? Yeah. Just kind of the counting paper type of thing. But then when you experience the community piece of what, and I'll say the industry or what Stampin' Up is, that was it. Yeah. Right? That was it. Then I'm like, okay, this is bigger than just this business that my family is running. This is bigger than just any one person. Yeah. And it's bigger than me. Yeah. And so then I think that brings in kind of our why and like a higher meaning, a higher purpose kind of a thing of what you're trying to do. And so that's what I latched onto in my teenage years. And then as I worked in and out of the business in different areas and focuses, that was the constant.
I think it's a really special thing. You know, I've spoken to a few people recently who, you know, in another company where they actually make everyone start in the call center and customer service or in the warehouse, because having that incredible experience in all the different areas, I think, is so important, especially if you're going to be running a company and you need to understand, if I make a decision, how is that going to flow on through to every part of the business, rather than making captain's calls and having an impact different areas significantly and not knowing what that looks like, or potentially not caring. I think it's the downfall of a lot of companies. So I really admire that. And I think that's really, I don't know if it was intentional that you were put into all of these different areas, but I'm sure that's what's made you such a great leader in this company that's able to see all these areas. Would you do it differently if you were to go back in time? Would you change much about the way that you came into your CEO role?
No, I don't know that I would change anything. I think I might give myself a little bit of advice here and there. But what I loved about my progression was just that I was allowed to be able to find my place, find the things that were interesting to me. Yep. This role in particular was never something that was expected, and I never really thought that I would do that. Like, I didn't set out working in the business to be in this seat in a leadership kind of role. I just liked what I was doing. Yep. And so sometimes we find what we're really good at or what we are really passionate about just by experiencing that free flow of work and time spent doing what you love.
And so what do your kids think of the whole thing? Like, do they love the company like you loved it when you were a kid? Are they involved, or are they kind of like, Mum, I'm off to do my own thing, I'm out of here?
I think if I'm speaking for my kids, I think that they see that from a distance. Yep. When it really hits their heart is when they're able to come to that event, right? Yeah. That convention or...
It's powerful, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. I think that then they see this group, right? This community, they get a chance to talk with the demonstrators and their families, and then it becomes tangible. It's real. Yeah. You feel it more than see it. Yeah. And so they love Stampin' Up. Not all of them love to craft. I have a couple boys. One of them is very artsy. One of them not so much, but he married someone who loves to paper craft. And so she's welcome in the family. But I have a daughter that works here. I've got a nephew, some brothers-in-law. So it's fun to be able to include this purpose in our family.
Yeah, so good. So I want to talk about community, because you have said that word lots of times, and I know this is really important to you. And one of the things that really stood out to me when we first met you, you know, I met you at the conference in Vegas, and I think I spoke, and then I was sort of backstage, and I sat back and listened to you go out and speak. And both Greg and I, you said one thing that Greg and I both turned to each other and went, Wow, I love that. I think that sums up not just your company, but so much of this industry. But you said it in such a succinct, beautiful way. And that was that you're here to eradicate loneliness. And I love that. Where did all of that come from? What was the sort of, I guess, the passion behind that? Was that yours? Was that always the intention of the company?
That's a really great question. So, and funny story, actually. The eradicate loneliness, like those two really powerful words, came from a board meeting just in the past few years. I actually think when you heard it, it might have been the first time that I actually spoke those words out loud to our field, because it was a few years back. I was in a board meeting, and I remember our advisory board pushing on me a little bit. That's what they're supposed to do, right? It's supposed to be a little bit of pressure. And so they kept saying, why are you doing this? Like me, they were asking me as a person, not for the greater Stampin' Up. And they just kept asking why, kind of like an exercise in 5 why questioning.
Yes.
And I kept talking about our purpose, and I kept talking about our values, and I kept talking about our demonstrators, and they kept pointing back to why I was doing what I was doing, why all those things lined up for me. And I remember being flustered, and I was emotional, of course, because emotions tend to do that and make you cry, right? It comes out your eyeballs. And and I just remember saying, I just want to eradicate loneliness. And they just sat back in their seats and they just said, okay, that's it.
Wow, I love
That's it. That's why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about that is that we say it all the time, right? We say, welcome someone in, or invite someone to be part of a gathering, or invite someone to craft with you, or invite someone to be a friend, right? The flip of that, or the reason you would do that, is to eradicate loneliness.
Yeah,
that's what
absolutely.
resonated with me, but I'd never spoken it in that way.
Yeah.
And when I did, some of our field, our demonstrators were like, oh my gosh, that's it.
That's it. Yeah.
So they really aligned with that.
We were sitting there going, that's it. That's great.
That's it.
You're not even part
That's
of
it.
the business. I love it.
It's such a huge thing.
We've been repeating that back to them ever since in trainings, because it is such a very powerful statement, and yet it's almost like, well, duh. Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Isn't it great though when you can put the words to it? But I do just want to come back to the why thing for a sec, because I think a lot of people who are trying to grow businesses in direct selling haven't stumbled on their why. They probably think the company needs to have, a mission statement or a why, but I don't. I can just share theirs, and you might, but for the vast majority of people, I think the magic is understanding. And like you said, it was that when you get to your why, it is an emotional thing, right? Because it's tapping into your personal values, your heart space. I think it was a lot of insight for them to push you to do that.
They're smart.
And very powerful. Is that something you encourage your demonstrators to also do, is find their own personal why?
Yes, we've talked about it at multiple events. I've talked about it a lot, I think, because it was so impactful for me.
Yeah.
And I kind of held it close to the vest a little bit for a little while, because I was like, this is for me. It doesn't need to be for anyone else. What's interesting about a why, when you find it and then you turn around and share it, it can also help someone else articulate their own.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think that there is power in discovering what your personal purposes, and if it aligns with a company that you're with, that's 10x, right? Because then you're amplifying that mission and that purpose in an aligned way.
Yes.
And you're moving in the same direction. And so I think that's powerful.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it has to be the same, right?
No,
it shouldn't be. But I think that
there'll be a congruence there.
Yes, absolutely.
I love it. And so let's talk a bit about the community element, because you are really passionate about community. You talk about it a lot. And you also have talked a lot about the bringing together of people. How are you using that in sort of your 2025 plan this year? What does community look like for Stampin' Up?
The way that we think about community is probably in the way that you might think, but we're going to tweak it just a little bit. We're leaning a little bit more into experience, right? We have a really great product. Everybody's got a really great product, right? Yeah. And a lot of times we lead with product, or we lead with opportunity. We're starting to lead with experience. We're starting to lead with community, because that's The product is the vehicle.
Yeah.
It might be the reason we get together, but it's not the thing that keeps us glued together, right?
Yeah.
It's not the thing that brings us together again. It's the connection that you make,
Yep.
right? And the relationships that you build with one another that amplifies what you're doing. So I believe that community can transcend product.
I love that.
And so we'll lead with that. We're going to
Yeah.
lead with the community piece.
I think there's so much power in that, and probably something that I think you guys are probably leading a bit with at the moment. There are a lot of companies, a lot of people out there that are saying, I need to lead with the product, or I need to lead with the business, because there's this assumption that that's what makes my business unique and valuable. But you've recognized and you're encouraging them in the space that actually it's the people they bring together, the product and the business is a tool. And you're advocating for that. I think that's really beautiful.
Well, each demonstrator, right? Each person is what's bringing the value.
Yeah.
Right? You bring the value to your space.
Yes.
And your business.
Yeah.
So I feel that strongly about that with the field. They bring the value.
Yeah.
What they do is awesome, right?
Yes.
But they are what's most important.
So how are you empowering them to really build community? What strategies are you giving them to help them with that this year, or to encourage them to do that this year?
We're starting really simple. I mean, we've been talking about
Simple's
this forever,
good.
right? Simple is good.
Yeah.
I think it's just reaching out, looking for someone who needs a friend. I think, how are you going to connect other people?
Yeah.
If we're doing that consistently, it becomes habitual, right? You're just thinking all the time about how you're going to open your circle, about how you're going to welcome someone in, who else you're going to invite to a gathering. And then you have this community piece, then how are you going to connect each other?
Yeah.
There's something that happens when you're not focused on you and you're focused on them.
Yeah.
That you're able to fulfill a need and provide that space for people to feel welcome and that they belong.
Yeah, I love that. So good. And so when it comes to community, I know this is a really big question for a lot of people trying to grow a business in this space. Do you have any tips that you could give to help people understand how to effectively build community? Even just some simple things. If they're thinking, well, for example, we hear a lot of people say, oh my gosh, I live out in the middle of nowhere. There's no one that lives near me right now. How do I go about doing this? Would you have any tips for them as to how they might be able to start to build a community? Knowing that it starts with one, by the way.
It's just, one at a time. I know that sounds so trite, but it's just
so true.
One.
Everyone knows someone,
just
right?
One ask.
Yeah.
Just one, come hang out. Just one, let's chat.
Yeah.
Just one comment. Get us out of our comfort zone a little bit. Just reach out to one person, someone new.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
And we'll be surprised what that brings back.
Yeah.
I think I saw something on social media about how so many of us wish to be part of the experiences we see, the communities we see.
Yes.
And I'm a big fan of creating the community you want to be a part of.
Oh, I love that.
So I think that there's power in that too.
Is there, would you give a process or a structure to doing that? Is there a step-by-step, hey, if you want to build the community you want to be a part of, here are some things to consider if you're going to do it?
Well, you're talking about reaching out. You're talking about phone calls. You're talking about inviting to gatherings consistently, following up, all the normal salesy things that you would do. But I think if you're caring about somebody, then you're flipping and determining what they need. And so how can you respond to what they need? So in terms of the systematic stuff, it's all the stuff that we talk about. It's just being consistent with it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that it's answering your question the way that you want.
It definitely is answering my question. I think, the confusion for a lot of people is, where does it go from selling to connecting? And, you made a good point. What do they care about? What matters to them? And tapping into that. One of the things that we've been using recently, I don't know if you're endorsing of this, but I'm going to throw it out there.
Okay, do.
Is, where there are some really great uses for ChatGPT and there are some really terrible uses for ChatGPT. But one of the really great uses that we've found recently is it's a really great way, if you don't know what matters to your target audience, to actually get a little bit of assistance from ChatGPT to help you better understand what sort of conversations to have with them, what they care about, what worries they have, what matters to them. Is that a tool that you've been using yet? Or have I just
You know what? I am not, everyone's using all these different tools. Our sales team is implementing many of them.
Yes.
And I am not going to be able to give you the run of the mill list. So
yeah, I think there's so many things that we can do. There's so many tools out there that we can use to enhance and help us to better connect. And it's not about replacing us, is it? It's not about becoming less human. It's about being more human in a very non-human world. I don't know how to say that. It's not that's inhumane world. It's a very technical world, techie world right now.
I
think
lean,
people feel more disconnected than ever before.
I lean toward the individual connection. And can that happen through technology? Sure. But I think that you can ask ChatGPT, right, about a target audience or what somebody needs, and that's great.
But you can also ask the person, right?
Yeah.
Pick the phone up. You know, I said to someone the other day, they're like, how do I get to know who my target customer is? I said, do you have a customer? And they said, yes. I said, pick the phone up and ask them. And they're like, wow,
and
didn't occur to me to do that.
Yeah. And sometimes I think that's a stretch. We're always asking our demonstrators what's important to them. We're observing, actually. Sometimes you learn more just by watching than you do by asking.
Yeah.
So if you're really observant, if you're paying attention, if you care about the person that you're interacting with or your target customer, you care about them, then your observations of them will inform how you respond and cater to fill that need.
That's really powerful. Yeah, awesome. And so you also have watched many, many distributors over the years. You have seen people do really well in business. You've seen people do not so well in business. Have you noticed any patterns around, you know, what are some of the behaviors, maybe personality, not personality types, but I guess the attitudes that people bring to the table for those that are highly successful versus those that maybe aren't?
Yeah, the one thing that I notice about some of our top achievers is that they've figured out, and this takes maybe some time, you get more comfortable with who you are as a person and the value that you bring, but they're unapologetically them.
Oh, I love that.
Right? Yeah. And so I talk about that. That's a phrase that I use a lot because I want my kids to be that way.
Yes.
Right? I want my kids to be unapologetically them and to be completely comfortable in their own skin. So I'll flip that to the field too, and to each of us as individuals, right? If we know who we are and we're able to project that out and be unapologetically who we are, and then we interact with whatever business we're in a way that's authentic and true to who we are, then that will shine through more than, hey, Sam does her business this way.
Yes.
And so I must need to do my business this way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or so-and-so does their business this way. I think you can experiment that way, just like you might, but you need to find who you are in your space, in your business.
Yes.
And be okay with that. Sometimes people are like, I'm in person. I just do the in person. It's what I love. Perfect. Nope, I'm all online. I'm really introverted. I don't want to talk to everybody. And they find a way to connect in different ways. They're connecting online, right? And sometimes it's a mix of both, which I love, but they're them.
Yes.
That's the most important piece. Don't pretend to be someone you're not.
Yeah. We call it finding your recipe. And I love that. I love that. So perfect. And it's such a simple thing. I think we do, particularly with social media, have this comparison situation going on where we're constantly looking at other people thinking, if I am going to be more successful, I need to be more like that and less like me. But the secret sauce is you, right? So can we flip it on its head?
Yes.
What about attitudes or behaviors from people that are less successful?
Okay. I think what I've observed is those that are maybe less successful are looking for, how would I say this? They're looking for ways not to lose instead of looking for ways to win. So it might be more of that, what's possible, open-minded, abundance mentality, rather than that, this is all happening to me. There's nothing I can do. Something is changing and it's impacting my business. And you just can't quite, it's a mindset shift, right? And so if you can turn that, if people can say, okay, I'm in this space where this is not going to be good for me. How do I turn this around? It's a turning point for a lot of people, I think.
Mindset's everything, right? Have you seen people go from that to switching it up and
Yes.
flourishing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a combination of this is who I am and how I want to run my business, what matters for me. Yep. And then that I can do this. Yeah. It's going to be amazing. If I stumble, I'm going to pivot and move forward. So it's kind of this, it's a combination of the two things, I would say.
Really, I love that abundance mentality, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so good. So let's look forward. What does the future hold for Stampin' Up 2025 and beyond? Tell us all the secrets.
Oh my gosh, I'm what can I share?
What are all the new products coming out?
I can't tell you that. But I will tell you that we do, I mentioned this before, this community piece, this connection piece, this experience piece of who we are. I hope that as you look back in 12 to 18 months from now, you'll be like, oh yeah, we can see that. We can see that from Stampin' Up. Yeah. Stampin' Up is more than this product that we sell. Stampin' Up is about that community, and we hope to bring that to light a whole lot more.
That's amazing. I can't wait to see what that shift looks like. And because I'm a little bit more behind the scenes, we're already working with some of your demonstrators. I have been watching some of them already. I don't know what you're doing at the moment, whether or not it just happens to be that everyone's on that same page and they're all really on board with that eradicating loneliness, or whether you've already been speaking into that. I'm noticing this great big focus on just pulling people together. Which is so great. And it's beautiful to watch because it's more congruent with how we are as human beings, right? It's easier to make it about a catch-up than it is to make it about, I really need to get more sales this month. So I think it will naturally, those sales will naturally take care of themselves. Yeah,
I agree.
Which is exciting. So I've got some questions to ask you. They're my favorite questions with every podcast interview. Now, the first one is, and we have a book list which we love to add to because I really believe in growth and knowledge and always expanding our minds and feeding our minds. So I'd love to know what your book is, your favorite book to add to our accelerator book list.
Okay, I knew you were going to ask me this, and it's hard for me to pick a favorite, but I'm going to give you my most recent.
Okay, yeah.
I got done this last month with Mel Robbins' The Let Them Theory.
Yes.
And I love it. I love it. You'll see it pop up. It's all the rage right now, but I did love it. It's really simple and straightforward. Yeah. Let them, then let me. Yep. Kind of a take on things. And the way that she wrote it, it's personal and connects the reader to her, which is fabulous.
I love it. So good. And I was actually having a conversation with someone about this a couple of days ago. They said to me, I'm writing a book. And so I've hired an outside consulting agency to run my social media for me, to brand me in the lead up to my book. And they said, but I'm having a lot of problems with my feed having no interaction at all. And I said, well, the reason is because you're not running it, and people are going to connect to and buy a book from someone that they feel that they can resonate with. And you just made that point, because the reason this book has stuck with you so much is because you feel you are connecting with the real Mel Robbins, right?
That's the key.
That's the key. I love it. So your favorite quote?
Oh, okay. Something along the lines of courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting anyway. I think there's a version of Mark Twain and another president probably or something.
Well, we made up the Sara Douglass version today.
No, not that one. But I just think courage is, sometimes we think courage and fear are separate, and they're not.
No.
They can coexist. And so that's something I tell myself often.
Yeah.
Just have courage.
I love it.
Accept the fear and go.
Go anyway. Step anyway. And now, if you could have any superpower, what would that be and why?
We have this conversation as a family every so often.
Okay, great. Well, this will be an interesting answer then. She's already practiced.
Yeah, it doesn't change for me. And this might be a weird one. I would love to be able to read people's minds.
Oh, it's not weird. I get it all the time.
Okay.
But what I will say is I think it's weird, because why would you want to know what people would think?
Okay, so let me tell you why that's a superpower that I want. I think that I want to understand where people are coming from a little bit more. I can ask, we can have a conversation, we can learn that. But if I could just get a little bit further in there, then maybe I would understand the human race a little bit more. I don't know, maybe it would be way more confusing, but I'll take that one.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it would be a really scary one to know what was really going through people's minds all of the time.
I just want to switch.
Turn it on and off.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I just need to
just
switch.
When you want to know.
Yep.
So definitely not like the movie with Mel Gibson.
Yes. What a woman wants. Yeah. What a woman wants, or something like that.
Absolute torture. Right.
Worked out.
You know that there was a sequel to that movie, What Men Want, and it was a total flop? No, because people only care about what the women want. Sorry. Okay, last question. If you could go back in time and say one thing to your past self, what would that be?
You know more than you think you do. Trust yourself.
Yeah.
And I would say that to most anyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's true for everyone.
I think
people know more than they think they do. They just have to trust.
Yeah, so good. Well, I think that's a perfect way to wrap up our chat today. Thank you so much for sitting with me and, inviting us into your beautiful space here. And, I appreciate you being a guest and sharing your amazing wisdom and knowledge from over the years with everyone. And I'm super excited to see what Stampin' Up does over the next 12, 18 months in your community element. I think that's going to be amazing. So thanks again, Sarah.
Thanks for being here and for having me.
Oh, such an honor, such a pleasure. So again, thank you to our beautiful listeners for tuning in. We love you guys too. And we'll see you on the podcast again next week. Bye for now, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this episode of the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. If you love listening and you found that this was helpful for your direct selling business, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also check out the recommended video that's popped up on your screen right here. I look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye for now.